My slides are not opening.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Case by Case webinar. And so today we have a very special guest from Right Research, Ms. Sonam Srivastava. And she's been in this field. She's one of the early adopters of small cases, and she's really bringing a really big change into the industry, and she's very respectable in this community as well. So Sonam, please say hi.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this stream. We have a very interesting presentation planned for you guys. We'll be talking about what's happening in the markets and what's happening in the economy and how they are happening in a very uncorrelated way. And what is the implication of for this for the future? Now, why is this topic very, very important for us? Is because at Right Research, we have these tactical portfolios that we offer to our clients, where what we do is we allocate to the correct asset class or market factor at the correct time and sort of forecasting what will happen in the next period in the market is very, very important to us. If you have to choose a good theme for the next quarter, it is very important to know what's happening in the economy and in the market and how it's looking in the future. So we'll just get started. We have a very interesting presentation planned with a lot of graphics to begin with. And we'll be showing what is the disparity between market and the economy, what is the reason for it, what is the outlook for the future, what the experts are saying. We'll look at a little bit on what the budget is saying and what we are doing at Right for this at this present moment. Yeah. So we'll start off with the disconnect. So there's a disconnect in the market. Everybody is talking about it. The topic of this presentation is market versus economy. You don't hear this term market versus economy that often, but right now there is a disparity. That's why we're talking about it. So now let's just look at this disconnect. So here I have the numbers for the US economy. We see that the GDP as in the US is at a multi-year low. We see that the unemployment is really high. I mean, it's still high. It came down from the peak. The industrial production is low in the US, and the COVID cases are rising rapidly. So this is based on the economic data coming from the US. And then you look at the US markets, and we see that they are at a lifetime high. They're just touching new and new highs. Every day, there is an exuberant bull market that closes at a high every other day. So there's obviously a disconnect. If we look at India, what we see is that India also has a GDP which has been worst in decades. We had minus 7.5, which is worst in any emerging market. We had an unemployment peak to a very high number, and then now unemployment is a little low. We have industrial production, which is very, very low still compared to pre-COVID levels, and our COVID numbers had surged to a very dangerous level, and now they are sort of stabilizing. But if we look at the Indian markets, we'll see that India again is hitting all the all-time high marks. Indian market Sensex touched 50,000 levels, which would have been unbelievable a few years back. We are running at a valuation of 40x, and our companies are hitting never before seen levels. So there's a huge disconnect. I'll also now quickly go to some of the other markets. So if we look at Europe, the situation is very similar. The GDP is low, unemployment is higher, IP low, COVID is rising very rapidly. And still the markets are doing well. They are back up from pre-COVID levels, and there's no crisis in the markets. If we look at China economy, the China economy has obviously done much better than everybody else. The numbers have recovered a lot. The COVID is obviously under control because of the measures they took. And the markets in China are again at a very, very high, even though China market move in a very different way from the other markets because they are not that free in the sense they are controlled a little bit by the Chinese government. Uh, so in these the chart for the four economies, we saw that this disconnect between the market and the economy is very, very prominent in all of these four nations, especially in India, US, and Europe. So why is this happening? Why is this disconnect so huge? What is the reason for it? Um, so the reason for it is that there's a lot of liquidity in the markets. What the central governments have done, what the central banks of the governments have done, is they have just pumped in money into the economy to stimulate growth in the economy. So the central banks believe that as they pump more money into the economy, businesses will grow more, um, households will get the stimulus checks and they'll grow more, and that will sort of take the economy back to pre-COVID levels. Obviously, we had a huge shutdown when um, businesses closed, small industries closed, etc. So central banks have sort of pushed money into the economy to stimulate it. We see this that the US central bank balance sheet has doubled since March. European balance sheet has also increased by a lot. Even in India, where we are an emerging country, so we don't have so much scope to print money, as much scope as the Fed does. Still in India, we have seen a lot of growth in the money supply in the central bank's balance sheet. And even in China, we have seen a spike in the central bank's balance sheet. So when the central banks print money, the money comes into the economy, and then uh, we as investors put that money into the stock markets. And that's why the stock market sort of grow. Uh, and not just that. So in India, we haven't printed as much money as obviously as the US has done, but India has received like a lot of foreign inflow. So people in the US have now so much excess liquidity, and they think that India as a country will show good growth number in the future. So they are investing more and more into India. And when they invest more into India, our stock market indices, they grow at a very rapid pace. The third reason is interest rate. So another monetary policy tool that that the RBI or the SEC uses is that they suppress the interest rates so that businesses have easy credit available. So if I'm a small business and because of COVID I got hit, now I can get a loan at a very small rate. I won't be crushed under a big loan that I have to take. Because people suppress the interest rate, but when they suppress the interest rate, anybody who is lending money or who is buying a bond will also get a very bad return. I mean, a very not a bad return, but like a very low return on the bond. So that's why they would prefer equities over bonds. That's why equity markets are again seeing a lot of surge, because they are becoming more and more favorable compared to bonds, which is another major asset class. So these are the reasons that we think which is causing this disparity. So looking at these three reasons, it makes sense that, okay, this disparity is happening and these are the reasons. Now let's look at some wisdom coming from economists and researchers and what they are saying. So first of all, why is there so much liquidity? Obviously, we went into a crisis. Why is the government just printing money for that? So the reason for that is the modern monetary theory. The modern monetary theory, is what it says is that the central banks, that your economy is like a sink, and the central banks sort of open the taps through which water comes, and it feeds the economy. And this water is the money. And when this water grows by a lot, that's when you have inflation and money drips out of the economy. And when there is very less water, when the economy is struggling, then the central bank sort of open the tap and they see that the economy has, there's a lot of water. Water has filled up the sink. They close the tap by using tax policy or other measures. And that's how they sort of try to keep the economy under control. So the modern monetary theory, it says is that by printing money to stimulate the economy, the government can keep the economy under control. Now, there are other economic theories as well, like the Keynesian theories or the modern Keynesian theories, which say that instead of printing money, government should be doing reforms. But what we see in the recent years, in 2008 and now, is that governments rely more and more on the modern monetary theory, where they print money to stimulate the economy. Now, let's talk about what are our expectations, right? So, if we think, very analytically about how should the economy or the GDP affect the stock markets. So if we look at it from a supply side perspective, what we'll think is, okay, when the economy is growing, when the GDP is growing, that will lead to, companies having a lot of profit growth, right? They will see a lot of corporate profit growth. When we see a lot of corporate profit growth, we'll see companies showing that, okay, my EPS has grown by this much. And when we see that the EPS of these companies are growing, we invest more and more into them, and that's why the price rises and we'll see stock market returns. This is a very logical pattern that comes into our mind, and that's why we say that, okay, market is rising, why is the economy not rising, or the economy is rising, why is the market not rising? We expect this correlation because of this supply side relation. But what actually happens is, so I have these charts from research done by Morningstar and World Bank, where what they have done is they have tried to find a correlation between GDP growth and stock market returns across developed and emerging nations for various years. And what they have very interestingly found is that markets and GDP growth actually have a slight negative correlation. So, I mean, what happens is that on the years when the market is growing, GDP falls, and the GDP is growing, market falls. I mean, that's what this relation sort of, what you can make out of this relation. What they've also very interestingly done is they have tried to see how the stock market return of this year impacts GDP growth of next year, right? So does high stock market growth cause high GDP growth in the next year? And here, very interestingly, what they have found is that there's a positive correlation. So high market growth for this year causes a high GDP growth for the next year. This is for a very wide set global study. Indian markets obviously are very different. We are a smaller market compared to the global markets. Our economy has very recently opened up and grown. So I did some analysis on the relation between Indian GDP and market, and very interestingly, again, I found that in the Indian context, somehow the market returns and GDP are positively correlated before. I mean, so market return is correlated to the GDP of this year, and GDP of next year is correlated to market return of this year. Now, again, in the last 20 years, India has had a very, very positive return. We have grown from like 3,000 numbers to 5,000 to 50,000 in the Sensex. So obviously, we've seen a lot of market growth. We've seen a lot of above 8% GDP growth in many years. So the last couple of decades have been good in that sense. So it's very difficult um, to find this correlation from the Indian context. I mean, we have been growing rapidly, so this correlation might not be good to just look at from an India perspective. Now I have like, what are the justifications that we can give for a disconnect between the economy and the market? So we talked about foreign flows, we talked about monetary policy, we talked about interest rates. This is something that is coming from the policy perspective, that there's a lot of liquidity coming into the stock market, will take the stock markets up. There's a lot of liquidity. The interest rates are very low. Invest into equity. Those are the reasons that we saw. But what are the other reasons that make the economy and the stock market very, very different? So one is that economy is way bigger than the markets, right? So when we talk about Nifty or the Sensex, we are looking at top 50 companies, right? But there are so many smaller firms. There are MSMEs. This big private list of private companies, right, which are not included in the public sector. There is the informal economy. There is entrepreneurship. There is startups that are obviously getting a lot of scale in India, but are not listed anywhere on any public market. So obviously, economy is very, very different from the markets. Also, the broader economy includes all the different asset classes, whereas when we look at the index, we're just looking at the equity. So that's why there's a disparity between economy and the markets. Also, markets are traded daily, and markets are very, very different from economy because a lot of different things like sentiment, news, and politics will affect the markets. Markets sort of follow a cycle of, excitement, thrill, euphoria, and then you get into an anxious phase, you get into, you know, a market depression, and the cycle sort of continues. So markets go through a sentiment-driven phase, which makes it very, very different from, which makes it very different from, what we call economic growth. um, News and sentiment and politics impact markets. So, an example that we can look at is Donald Trump when he tweets, when he used to tweet, right? You'd see that he would move the prices of a particular company by his tweeting. So obviously, a lot of politics, news, and sentiment impact the markets, which makes it very, very different from what we call economic growth. So, having talked about the reasons due to which we think that the markets and economy are different, and what's the rationale that we can find, what do we expect next? So, this is a very, very important question that we all have to think about as investors, right? That in the next period, what is that we expect so that we can change our portfolio allocations accordingly so that we can make the best out of the next period. Um, so looking at the next period, so this is what the economists are saying, right? So if you look at the World Bank report or the IMF report that came recently next week, what the IMF is saying is that India was one of the worst performing emerging market nations this year. We had a -8% growth, which is obviously very, very bad. But this was, obviously the time of COVID and massive lockdowns. But what they're projecting is in the next year, India will grow at the highest pace among all emerging markets and even all developed markets. And that should be very, very positive for India. IMF is projecting that we will grow at 11.5%. And what they're saying, World Bank is saying is that emerging markets will grow in a much more rapid pace than advanced economies. And by 2022, everybody will reach to the same pace that they had before COVID. So that is about the growth numbers for the economy. And what about the fiscal stimulus that is keeping the economies up, right? So right now, like I said, central banks are printing money and that is keeping the economy up. So what they're projecting is that maybe next year, once we see, that the economies have normalized, right? Um, the disparity that has happened between the lower class and the upper class has sort of normalized and things are coming back to normal. That's when the government and the central banks will stop the stimulus packages because it's not very prudent to keep on printing money, especially for a developed nation like India. So they will stop the stimulus package somewhere, not immediately, but once they see that their policies have started taking effect and there is economic welfare, not just the market picking up. Once they see that there is enough economic welfare, they'll stop the stimulus packages, and that should sort of impact the markets. Now, let's look at what some of the experts are saying. So obviously, experts are talking about this in a very, very mixed way. IMF has obviously said that India will be the fastest growing economy next year. And our chief economic advisor said that India is actually making a V-shaped recovery. The RBI governor has warned that our valuations are very stretched, which is not very good for the financial stability. The Fed chairman has said that he doesn't see a lot of vulnerability by these high stock markets. Talking about market experts, Goldman Sachs has said that they're optimistic about the outlook. experts from Motilal Oswal have said that obviously we won't see the growth that we saw in April, May, which was very rapid, but we'll see a little more modest growth. Uh, Market expert Madhusudan Kela has said that the long-term growth story for India would continue, and we'll keep on seeing growth. And everybody has like these expectations from the budget that they should, foster growth in the economy through the budget. But now let's look at what are the lessons that we learned from the 2008 crisis, right? 2008 crisis was obviously a much more extended crisis than last year's crisis. 2008 crisis was something that we had never seen before. Obviously, we have never seen a pandemic before also, but um, yeah. So in 2008, what happened was the markets started recovering by 2010 end, right? That's when the market sort of had a break even. What happened? So that's the stage that we are sort of in right now. What happened after the markets recovered is that we saw a commodity price rise. So even right now, if you look at the IMF report, what they're saying is that commodity is the only asset that is undervalued at the moment. Equities are overvalued, yields are very low, so bonds are not attractive, but commodity is one of the assets that is very undervalued right now. So we might also see that we'll see some price spikes in commodities. So in 2011-12, we saw price spikes in commodities, obviously. And then after this commodity price rise, around 2013, if you guys remember, um, the central bank of the US said that, okay, we have done enough stimulus from the economy. We have pumped in enough money into the economy. Now we are going to slowly stop printing excess money. So that is something we call as QE tapering or taper tantrum. I used to work on a trading floor back then, and that was one of the craziest time that I have ever seen in the markets when the QE tapering happened. INR sort of went from 40 on an average to 60. At that time, there was a lot of market volatility, and the inflation in in the country was really really bad. So that was a bad time for emerging markets. Uh, but we saw in late 2014 when Raghu Ram Rajan came in as the governor, and there was uh, inflation targeting, and that sort of stabilized the rupee and the markets. And then after that, in 2014, we had this rally when Prime Minister Modi was elected. So obviously, so this is what happened in 2008. But obviously, if our country is prudent enough, if our inflation doesn't spike up this time, right? So we will be in a much better space than what happened last time in the QE tapering. And that is something that a lot of experts are also saying, that the government in this budget has to, stimulate growth, but they should also be prudent that our inflation doesn't spike up in the future, so that we face all these consequences. So having looked at the experts in the charts, let's now look at the memes. I'll let you guys enjoy these memes for a few seconds. Yeah, so obviously this is the time for memes. Memes are now ruling the US markets, and they're as good as all the charts and experts that we have seen. Um, so having looked at the outlook for the future in various ways, now let's come back to the budget. So budget is a very, very important thing that is going to happen on Monday. Budget is like, a earning release for a what is how a earning release for a company is very, very important. Similarly, a budget for a country is very important when the government sort of says, this is my outlook, this is what I will spend into the next year. And that sort of lets the investors, internal as well as external, evaluate their investment into the company. The budget math is something that I will not go very much into. This is something that a lot of experts have been talking on the news, and they will keep on talking for a couple of days, where where the economic survey has said that the growth in the economy is going to be around 11.5%, like the IMF has projected. That's the nominal GDP growth. And on that, on top of that, if you add inflation, you have your real GDP growth. And based on that, they sort of project what will be the tax revenue next year. And using the tax and non-tax revenue and the asset sales that the government is going to do, you have your expenditure figures, and you have what is coming into the economy, and then the government decides what they will spend into next year, and that is expenditure figure, and the disparity between these is what we call fiscal deficit. So the government typically tries to target a number below 3-4%, but this time, because it's the COVID era where the government has to spend a lot, we will see a little bit of a higher expenditure. And if you look at, if you have been watching what the experts are saying, if you have been watching the economic survey that have been coming around, what everybody is saying is that government should not stop spending at this moment. They should keep on spending into the economy. They should focus on growth instead of, seeing that this is a bad time, so we should start becoming conservative. Instead of becoming conservative, they should focus on growth. But while focusing on growth, they should keep check on, the fiscal deficit. They should keep check on the debt, because we are a developing market. We don't have the power to print infinite money like the Federal Reserve does. Also, the government has to focus a lot on the welfare of the sectors, the poverty-stricken sectors of the economy that have had a much worse experience than the well-off sectors in the economy. So a lot of the Atmanirbhar package, MNREGA and all that should be focused on. A lot of people are saying that we need infrastructure spending for long-term growth in the economy. And people are focusing on financial reforms and divestment of public sector companies. So these are the key themes that I've just sort of listed here. What would be the sector and themes which will be very interesting to look after the budget would be, first, like everybody is saying, I think yesterday, the Prime Minister also said that we should focus on infrastructure and capital goods and manufacturing. So that will be a very interesting sector to look at after the budget. We'll see a lot of focus on healthcare, on vaccination, obviously, and plus also on incremental health welfare for the country, because as we can see now, is very, very important. And people are expecting a lot of some financial reforms like bad bank, etc. So these are the few sectors that I think should get focus after the budget. As for the themes that I think should be important after the budget, should be growth. So everybody's talking about growth. Any company that will show good profit growth would be awarded with higher returns in the coming months. We see, and now, I mean, the type of growth that we have seen in April, May, and after that, where everything sort of grew, may not happen for a long time into the future. So that is the time when we might see focus on higher quality stocks instead of all stocks. People will start picking and choosing the best performing, the highest quality stocks to put their money in, instead of putting it on any and everything. And we're also hearing a lot that PSUs will grow higher post budget. So these are the key themes and sectors that I have picked up. So now, as we end the presentation, I would like to share why this particular topic is something that I chose to talk about. So that is because we have these portfolios at RITE, which are called multi-factor tactical portfolios. So at multi-factor, in these portfolios, what we want to do is, like I say, multi-factor tactical. We want to be tactical enough to choose the best performing factor, best performing asset class for a given, scenario in the future. So every time we rebalance, we sort of check what will be the expectation in 1 month into the future, and where should we be investing, which particular theme is doing well, which particular asset class is doing well, and where we should be investing. So for us, looking at the economic conditions into the future is very, very important, which makes this topic very, very important for us. So this is our multi-factor tactical portfolios. We offer this in 3 categories. One is our balanced portfolio, where we have a moderate risk, we have a conservative portfolio where we have a very, very low risk, and we have a growth portfolio where we have a little bit higher risk. So this is the chart for the balanced portfolio. Here you see that where that this has been live for 18 months and it has given like up to 50% returns in these 18 months. And it did well during March because of asset allocation. We deallocated away from equities, as early in February and also in March. And that's why when the markets fell down so much, we didn't see such a huge fall. And now after, now as the recovery is happening, that's all, again, we have picked up that pace is because we allocated to high momentum and high quality stocks as the recovery started happening. And that's why we have had a very, you can see a very low risk and very consistent outperformance. And to take these decisions, like here to invest into bonds or to here to invest into momentum would take some sort of forecasting power for the future. So for us, something very key is regime shift modeling. This is something that we call regime shift modeling. So we look at the market and we try to forecast that what is the next period going to be. So this is a regime shift model. Here we use machine learning models using certain technical indicators and some fast moving macroeconomic indicators. So I'm not using, GDP to predict the markets, but I'm using the Nifty P ratio, dividend yields, etc., to forecast how the next period is going to look. We have this model that has a very high accuracy. We see up to 70% accuracy of this model. And why this is very interesting is, see, if you look at all the green areas, right, and if you accumulate all the green areas, you see that you would have a very good return out here. But if you accumulate all the red areas, this is not the time when you would want to be in the market. So our philosophy is that that we have this model that tells us that what is the sort of the next period going to look at, like that the next period will look like. And when it is, a good market, a green market, then what we'll do is we'll allocate more to high risk equities because that is the time when they will perform better. When it is a bad market, right, we'll allocate more to low risk equities and bonds and gold, certain, you know, assets that perform well when the markets are volatile. So if you look at our asset allocation uh, during March of last year, you'll see that in early February, we started having bonds in our portfolio, right? We had bond allocation into our portfolio. And as we got into March and April, we had like a high bond allocation and some gold allocation. That's why when we showed this chart, we didn't have like a huge drawdown that the market had. And now that the recovery has happened, we have sort of deallocated away from bonds. We have gone into international equities, even we have gone to high momentum stocks and high quality, high growth stocks to get the best out of the market returns in this scenario. So this is a very so if so this is a very, I mean, easy to understand model. Obviously, if you get a certain idea that this is how the market is going to look at, and if you can adjust your asset allocation, that is a much better thing to do rather than having like a 60-40 portfolio for you that will see, drawdowns and, underperformances. So this is what we are offering at Right, and this is why talking about the economy and market is very important for us. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Um, you'll find us on Smallcase at rightresearch.smallcase.com. We have been here for around 18 months. We have our tactical portfolio that I talked about, along with some thematic portfolios like momentum and small caps. Right now, we have started a discount code for 25% with the coupon code RIGHT2021. And the first 500 people who subscribe to us with this code will get access to this discount. And also, please follow me on social media to keep posted about what we are doing. Visit us on our website, subscribe to our newsletter when you reach our website so that we can be in contact. And if you like this video, please share it on social media. Please share it with your friends so that more and more people get to know about us. So that's it from my side, Abel, and let's start off with the Q&A.
Great. I think there are a lot of very interesting questions. So I think Sonam, you can take them right away. I think again it's a very interesting and intriguing topic, right? What market was economy? Because even when first time I heard, I was like, what? So yeah, we have a lot of questions. Yeah, so take them away, Sonam.
Yeah, just give me one second. All right. So I'll start off from the beginning. Divya Prasad is saying, what does it mean to have Nifty return of 40x? I mean, it doesn't, I was not talking about 40x in terms of return. I was talking about 40x valuation. So the valuation of the P ratio of Nifty had gone up to 40, which is something that people used to look at like 20 as a conservative number at certain time and 25 at a certain point. And now people don't talk about valuations anymore. Right? Darshan Gule has asked, what's the sample size for this correction? In what duration you regress returns and GDP annual? Yeah, so I regress annual GDP versus annual returns. So only for 20 years, we had 20 points for Nifty and 20 points for GDP. Suman Maji is saying how to get fundamental balance sheet data in CSV business for fundamental analysis. Uh, so obviously you can find this data on ticker tape that small case has. You can find it on screener.in, but obviously you cannot. I think you cannot download or get a lot of data out of these websites. So we at Right Research for our analysis, we buy this data from Capital Line. Um, we have tried Quandl before, but that doesn't work. So right now we are buying these data from Capital Line. More questions. Prakriti Agarwal has asked, which companies are expected to benefit the most from budget? So like I said, infrastructure is something that a lot of people are talking about, infrastructure and manufacturing. So when you talk about manufacturing, capital goods, and all those sectors will do well. PSUs, certain PSUs will do well. Defense sector will do well because government always allocates a lot of money to defense. People are saying that the budget will bring some financial reforms. So hopefully financial sector should do well, and healthcare, and also like if this is a growth oriented budget like people are saying, then all the industries that should benefit from growth, like automobile, FMCG, etc., everything should get a benefit out of it. So Hasini Varigi is asking, is small case fundamental driven? Yeah, so we use fundamental as well as a technical. So when we say momentum, we obviously are looking at the price volume, but when we talk about like quality or growth, then we have to look at fundamentals. Do you believe that the budget can revive the economy? I mean, that is something that we have to look at when the budget comes. Obviously, the finance minister is saying that they will try to do a lot for the economy in this budget, and hopefully, I mean, I am very hopeful that they should make some positive impact, and it should be a growth-oriented budget so that the markets can recover. So markets have had a bad 5 days before the budget. So I'm hoping, because it usually, this is what happens is that post budget we see a upside after seeing a downside pre-budget. Somebody's asking, till which level do you expect the market to correct before market is back? So yeah, so I think I was talking to somebody on Twitter about this. The next level to watch would be 1300, 320 based on the technical analysis. But obviously, I mean, I expect that post budget, the market should have a little bit of breathing space because usually this is what happens, that you see a bad pre-budget rally, but after post-budget for a week, you see a positive trend. Somebody is asking, I have invested during June, July 2020. Will my next 5-year investment be low because of economic crisis due to COVID? You invested in June, July 2020. Obviously, your investment return should be, I mean, obviously it won't be, what the Sensex has given from March to December, which is March to January, which is like almost doubling up. But yeah, you can get a good 20%, 15-20% consistent return if you invest into a good tactical portfolio, or even a good mix of assets. A healthy mix of equity, bonds, and gold in your portfolio can give you a very healthy return in the next 5 to 10 years. Somebody is asking, what are the best exclusive small case available for high risk profile? So in our case, we have the growth portfolio that I showed, that is good for a high risk individual. We also have a momentum portfolio that is good only for high risk individuals, and a small caps portfolio that is also suitable for high risk individuals. Can Nifty 50 index follow SGX Nifty? I mean, that is something that we see almost every day, because SGX Nifty is nothing but Nifty traded in Singapore, and SGX Nifty, I mean, they should be correlated, and SGX Nifty stays open when the Nifty is closed. So they sort of move in tandem. Somebody is asking, Mayank Madhav is asking, what is the strategy behind MFT, smaller investment, small case? So the strategy is the same that I just talked about, that we look at the market regime, and not like what is going to happen in 5 days, but what is going to happen in the next month or more than that. And based on that, we change our allocation to various factors. So right now, like we're investing into momentum and high quality stocks. Um, if the markets get risky, which something I don't see happening in the next few months, but in case when the market get risky, we will deallocate away a little bit into bonds and gold, etc. Where can I access historical information and forecast projections? Historical information is obviously present on our small case microsite, that is our backtest as well as live return. For the forecast projections, you can reach out to us and we can talk about it. Somebody asked, how can you invest into your portfolio? Just go to this link, rightresearch.smallcase.com. You will find our portfolios over there. You can click on subscribe now on any of the portfolios. And then you have a very easy step-by-step process where we'll ask a few questions about you. You'll have to pay our subscription fee, and you will reach to an investment page where you can just click invest now and invest. It just happens very quickly in a few clicks. Somebody is asking any analysis related to budget day on Monday. Obviously, I mean, we talked a little bit about the budget day, and it will, I think, very, very much depend upon the tone that the government has and the type of policies that they announce, which is something that I cannot speculate about. I'm not an expert on that subject. Somebody is asking, can we have indicator-based deep learning analysis model? Obviously, yeah, we use some machine learning in in our regime shift models, and use machine learning in some of our other portfolios. So obviously you can do it, but you have to be careful enough to have a good model, a robust model that has a good accuracy and consistency, etc. How can you subscribe? Like I told you, you can go to rightresearch.smallcase.com, find the subscribe now button, and then follow the step-by-step process. Yeah, so somebody is asking how in the future the allocation might change. So we will look at the market condition, and if our model says that it's a risky market, we will deallocate away from equities. Or if the model says that we should have some little allocation to bonds and gold, then we'll start adding that instead of having a pure equity allocation. Should I invest right now in your small case or wait for dips? I mean, we say, so what we are say is that our portfolios have a very consistent performance, so you can invest anytime, right? We will take care of investing your money into the right set of assets at any given point. So you can invest anytime you want. If you want to time it yourself and wait for the dips, so that is also something that you can do. A few of our customers actually do that. That is totally up to you. Do you think the issue with fiscal deficit versus government spending affect FDI? I mean, it might happen. I mean, see, everybody is talking about growth. Even the US and Europe is printing a lot of money, so nobody will question that. Uh, but if we are totally irresponsible, right, in terms of fiscal spending, that might send out bad signals. But I think this uh, government has been very prudent in terms of keeping the deficit low. So let's just wait and watch what happens on Monday. All right, so I think we've reached the end of the questions. I had a lot of fun answering all the questions. Like I said, please go to our small case website and you can avail a 25% discount right now. Please follow us on social media and share your, subscribe to our website, and uh, share this video if you think it is useful. It would be useful for others. I think we can close the presentation right now. We have taken 45 minutes, and thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope it was very useful to you guys.
Sonam, I think there are a few questions coming in. Would you like to take them as well?
Yeah. We can take more questions.
Yeah, so I think some of the questions are, I think from Sajil Das, if I invest some amount using your portfolio and after some time if you rebalance your portfolio, then how it gets changed in my portfolio?
Yeah, so on small case, you will get a link saying that rebalance now. So you have this button that you can click. And when you click that button, that the changes in your portfolio happen through that single click in your brokerage account. Right? So you just have to do a single click, and the executions will happen in your own brokerage account.
Another question is, a fun question that is, what about GameStop?
Yeah, so that was really, really interesting. I think that whatever the Reddit guys had a very good trade, and I think right. I mean, that should, like, if you knew about it, some hedge fund was shorting a stock that was not doing that bad, that was not going bankrupt, but they had like more than 100% short in that stock. So what the Reddit investor did was really, really intelligent. Is that they bought a lot of that stock, and the short squeeze happened, and it's unfortunate that they got blocked on Robinhood. Right?
Cool. I think we can conclude with the question session now.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
think. But so Sonam, I really have to say, like, it was really fun having you here. So I remember the first time I heard the topic that we were going to do the webinar on market versus economy, and we were talking about how it's a very confusing kind of a topic. Like I gave you a very weird analogy about whether it's the egg first or the chicken first, because here, and if you think about it, does the market drive the economy or does the economy drive the market? And it's an apt time for this, for you to talk about this because the budget is being released on Monday. So first of all, really thank you so much. It's not easy for anyone to come on a Saturday and then be like, okay, let's give out some gyan today. But thank you so much for taking the time. It really means a lot. And guys, please do check out Right Research Small Cases. The link is there on the screen right now, and plus in the description box. So please do check that out. And plus, Right Research is giving 25% discount with the coupon code RIGHT2021. And of course, there is a small catch. It's for the first 500 people. So hurry, like really, really hurry. Yeah, so again, the coupon code is RIGHT2021. That is WRIGHT2021. Don't miss us out. And thank you so much for joining us, to all of you as well. We really hope that you all had really great fun. Thank you, Sonam. Thank you so much for joining in. It was really a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.